And welcome again to the Study Bible Study, where we study the Bible with study Bibles. And Revelation 17:14 tells us, "And these shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall conquer them. For he is Lord of lords, he is King of kings, and they who are with him are called and chosen and faithful." God bless and amen. Let's start with the Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, and deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, for ever and ever. Amen. Now, in the words of the great and the late C.S. Lewis, the Christian does not think that God will love us because we are all good, but that God will make us good because he loves us. I believe in Christianity as I believe that the sun has risen, not only because I see it, because by it I see everything else. And God allows us to experience the low points in life in order to teach us lessons that we could learn in no other way. Now, the just man, the dikaios, a just man, equitable in character or in act, in a wide sense, upright, righteous, virtuous, a man who keeps the commands of God, a man whose way of thinking, feeling, and acting is wholly conformed to the will of God, and who therefore needs no rectification in the heart of life, a man who is approved and acceptable of God, a man who is such as he ought to be, a just man. Today we're going to go into an interesting book that's a very popular subject these days, so we're going to read it. Going to go a little off script from our Bible studies, and we're going to look at this book, and this is why we are going to pray the Our Father to sanctify our minds and keep in touch here. Okay. Now, the foreword. The Communist Manifesto is arguably the most consequential political pamphlet ever written. Its words have inspired millions of men and women to rail and to rise against the capitalist mode of production and build a different world. At the zenith of world socialism in the 1980s, governments inspired by the pamphlet's ideas reached across Eurasia and Asia, with satellites in Africa and the Americas, organizing more than 1 billion people under some form of Marxist-inspired government. Many countries outside the state socialist sphere have also found the argument persuasive, as the success of social democratic movements throughout the capitalist world attests to. Now, however, the pamphlet is more than a call for social justice and a different politics. Its arguments assume a scientific account of the history of capitalism and forecast globalization. Its predicative power testifies to its conceptual adequacy, theoretical cognancy. Indeed, the manifesto lays bare the engine of socialite development in such a compelling way that academic disciplines, anthropology, geography, history, political science, and sociology, even psychology, have incorporated elements of its approach into their work. Now, the manifesto was the work of two German intellectuals, Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. Marx was born in 1818 in Trier, Prussia. After receiving a doctorate in philosophy, a doctorate in nonsense, but in 1841, he turned to journalism and political economic study. Exiled from Paris and feeling unwelcome in the continent, he moved to London in 1849, where he lived until his death in 1883. He produced many works, the most famous aside from the Manifesto, The massive 3-volume Capital, the first volume of which was published in 1867, Friedrich Engels was born in 1820 in Barmen, Prussia. Among Engels' notable works are The Conditions of the Working Class in England in 1844 and The Origin of the Family, Private Property and the State in 1884. He was responsible for seeing the second and third volumes of Capital publication after Marx's death. Engels died in 1895 in London, written in December 1847 and January 1848. The first published in the German language, the manifesto was commissioned by the Communist League, a mostly German revolutionary organization founded under the persuasive influence of Marx at its London Congress in 1847. Now the League desired a programmatic statement to give its efforts a dynamic political purpose. Marx and Engels brought to the project the depth of their emerging materialist concept of history as well as the strategic goals the League was seeking the overthrow of capitalism and the creation of a new order. An order without social classes, founded upon a collective ownership in property, a sharing of one's property. A French translation of the manifesto was published in 1848 in Paris, shortly before the People's Spring, a series of rebellions that spread throughout Europe. However, with a small circulation, not enough time to enjoy familiarity. Now, the pamphlet was unlikely to have had much impact on those times. The appearance of the English translation in 1850 also failed to stir the public, and the manifesto faded into obscurity. When did it get revived, you ask? I don't know. Now, Marx became a member of International Working Men's Association in 1864, an organization drawn from the remnants of the League, and was elected to its General Council. This would become the first international 1864 to 1871. From this platform, Marx would deliver his powerful 1865 address on value, price, and profit, in which he sketched his pending argument in Capital, Volume 1, the notoriety of Marx's pamphlet, The Civil War in France. 1871 helped raise his stock as well. As a result, the editions of the manifesto in several languages appeared, and its arguments were widely shared and debated. The pamphlet grew in reputation with the proliferation of socialist movements and parties in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Now, the Russian Revolution of 1917 put the manifesto on another level, whereas the Second International, 1889 to 1914, had been rather ambivalent on theoretical issues. The Third International, 1919 to 1943, embraced the theory and the label with Vladimir Lenin as a model of scholar revolutionary, one of the original Scotists. Now, the revolution erased the distinction between theory and politics. The persistence of the Soviet Union and the establishment of the People's Republic of China in 1949 ensured the continued availability of Marx and Engels' catalog. Now, the radical politics of the 1960s and the 70s in the West provided another context in which Marx's ideas would find currency. Today, it is not unusual to find Marx and Engels' ideas presented without controversy in college textbooks and classrooms. Now, the most well-known claim Marx and Engels make in the manifesto is that the class struggle is the engine of historical transformation. Society as a whole is more and more splitting up into two great hostile camps, into two great classes directly facing each other, bourgeoisie and proletariat. Now, proletarianization is driven by the dynamic of capitalist accumulation in which a relatively small number of families gains control over the means of production and uses its position to the appropriate value produced by the worker for expanding capitalist production and establishing for themselves a life of leisure and opulence. For instance, the founding of the United States, approximately 80% of the free labor force was self-employed as artisans, farmers, or small business persons. Today, less than 10% of persons may be considered self-employed, and while this development has been accompanied by the rise of managerial and clerical strata of white-collar workers, they have, along with the professional classes, seen their work subjected to rationalization. Now, the experience of the most persons under capitalism today is employment as a resource for profit generation. Now, Marx and Engels' theory of the nature of the system explains a perpetual reorganization of the productive forces and the transformation of its attendant institutions, state, law, and ideology. Now, structural contradictions lying at the heart of its logic propel the development of capitalism across history and territory. The problem of overproduction, the periodic commercial crisis that grows progressively worse with time, result from the rational activity at the level of the firm, namely striving to maximize surplus value through mechanization, automation, and wage suppression, manifesting as irrational higher system level behavior. By making workers poor and redundant, capitalists undercut their ability to realize the surplus product in the market, and as a result, profit rates fall. The bourgeoisie address these calamities with war and imperialism and other tools at their disposal. But their interventions do not permanently fix the system. On the contrary, they prepare it for a future and a deeper crisis. And once again, this is the Study Bible study, where we study the Bible with study Bibles. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us not our trespasses. We forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, and deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. And Revelation 17:14 tells us, and these shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall conquer them. For he is Lord of lords, he is King of kings, and they who are with him are called and chosen and faithful. God bless and amen.